The darkness and lessons of war on humanity. Ever since humanity learned to stand upright, craft tools and build villages and cities, history has simultaneously written another chapter, that of violence and conflict. War has appeared not as a single event, but as a shadow, accompanying the development of civilization. Wherever there are people, conflict will eventually arise. The first battles were likely fought over a piece of land, for farming a herd of livestock or a water source. They were simple yet brutal. People killed each other for survival, to protect what they called territory, and out of basic instinct. But gradually, as tribes merged into nations, and power was concentrated in the hands of a few rulers, war was nitrogen monoxide longer simply about food. It became a game of power, a chessboard where pieces of flesh and blood were mercilessly sacrificed. Someone once said, "The history of humanity is the history of war." Indeed, from ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece and Rome to China and India, the entire planet has been soaked in the blood of warriors. The Greeks saw war as a way to prove the courage and greatness of their city-states. The Romans turned war into an industry. Each expedition not only brought back land, but also slaves, gold, and wheat to feed the empire. In the East, Chinese dynasties were built with swords and spears, and also collapsed in the smoke and fire of chaos. But the strange thing about humanity is that, even as war sows death, it is always wrapped in noble reasons. People don't say they are going to war out of greed, but for justice. No one admits to invading. Instead, they say they are civilizing, liberating or protecting the gods. There have been wars for religion, wars for glory, and even wars for peace. These pretexts have lulled generations, leading young soldiers to march to battle with the belief they are sacrificing themselves for an ideal. However, the harsh truth always emerges after the bugle call. Tens of thousands fall, cities crumble, and families are separated. Standing in the middle of a battlefield after a fight, looking at the piled bodies, one would see that war has nitrogen monoxide glory other than destruction. There is a great paradox. War, in its tragedy, has driven humanity to develop. Every war brings with it innovation, in the way weapons are made, societies are organized, and economies are run. Iron gunpowder chariots, warships, and later rifles, airplanes, and the atomic bomb were all products of war. Roads, fortifications, and even science and medicine have advanced faster because of war. So is war necessary? Or is it just the bloody price that humanity unknowingly pays for the insatiable greed of its rulers? Dynasties have fallen and mighty empires have crumbled. But one thing has never changed: the wound that war leaves on the human soul. The survivors and the next generations always carry a haunting memory. A village can be rebuilt and city walls can be restored, but the memory of screams, the smell of smoke, and the pain of separation can never be erased. And here we see the most tragic thing. War is never just about kings and generals. It is the tragedy of ordinary people. A child who loses a father, a mother who sends a son to the battlefield, a wife who waits for her husband who never returns. This is the truth that every war hides behind its grand proclamations. Looking back from ancient times to the present, there is a consistent lesson. War has never truly resolved a conflict. It only shifts the conflict to another form, starting a vicious cycle. Peace after war is often just a temporary silence before a new battle. One empire falls, another rises, and the wheel of violence turns endlessly. But that's why when we write about war, it's not just to recount battles, kings, and strategies, but more importantly, to see that over thousands of years, humanity has yet to learn how to truly overcome its violent nature. War is an ancient wound. one that humanity simultaneously nurtures and longs to heal. IT is the darkness that accompanies civilization, a lesson that has never been fully learned, and perhaps until humanity truly learns to place people, not power or wealth, at the center of every decision. That wound will have a chance to stop bleeding. The victims of war: soldiers and civilians. The soldier is a familiar symbol in every war. They are hailed as heroes, protectors of the nation, and warriors who sacrifice their youth for an ideal. In every country, the image of the soldier is honored in history books, on monuments, and in epic songs. But behind the bronze statue are flesh and blood people. Soldiers are not just symbols. They are young people who leave their homes, pick up guns often, without understanding why they must shoot a stranger on the other side of the front line. They enter war with trembling hearts, a longing for family, and the fear of being buried in foreign soil. War makes a soldier's life as fragile as a candle flame in the wind. A bullet, a shell, a wrong command, all can end a young life. Soldiers don't always die in glory. Many die in solitude, in mud, in pain that cannot be articulated. And if they survive, they carry wounds that are difficult to heal, a lost arm, blindness, or worse. Mental scars: post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is one such example. Many veterans return from war, unable to reintegrate into normal life. They hear the sound of cannons in their dreams. They tremble at loud noises, and they are haunted by the faces of fallen comrades. Soldiers are the first victims of every war. They are honored but also exploited. They are called heroes, but at the same time, they are living proof of war's brutality. If soldiers are the official face of war, civilians are the silent victims. War doesn't just happen on the battlefield. It spreads into every home, every street, every field. A bombing can wipe out an entire village. An exodus can turn tens of thousands of people into refugees. A raid can separate countless families. Civilians do not choose war, but they always pay the price. Throughout history, civilians have often become human shields for political ambitions. They are forced to abandon their homeland and become refugees. Children lose their childhoods. The elderly lose their homes, and women endure tragedies beyond words. And even when the war ends, the scars remain unmarked graves. Orphan children and survivors who can never forget the horrific memories. War does not end when the guns fall silent. It lives on in people's memories, passed down from one generation to the next. Soldiers carry the haunting memories into their sleep. Civilians carry fear in every meal and every story. Subsequent generations may be born in peace, but they grow up with the painful stories of their ancestors, and somehow war is still present in their souls. Psychologists call this collective memory. A nation that has gone through war will carry an indelible mark. IT shapes how they see the world, how they trust or distrust others, and how they face the future. And perhaps the most painful thing is that war makes people accustomed to violence. When death becomes normal, and cruelty becomes a tool for survival, humanity is deeply wounded. Modern warfare and economic motives. If ancient wars were conquests with swords, arrows, and spears, modern warfare has ushered in a new era. An era of weapons of mass destruction, global strategy, and battles that can shape the destiny of the entire world. The 20th century is considered the century of war, with 2 world wars, countless regional conflicts, and especially the emergence of weapons capable of annihilating humanity. In 1914, Europe erupted in what was called the Great War. The initial trigger was the assassination of the Austro-Hungarian Archduke, but behind it was a complex network of nationalism, military alliances, and imperial ambitions. The war quickly spread, drawing the entire world into its vortex. In the trenches, millions of soldiers lived in mud, among rats and with poison gas. War was nitrogen monoxide, longer a heroic but an industrial slaughter, where people were turned into numbers. In a casualty report when the war ended in 1918, more than 16 million people were dead. People hoped it would be the war to end all wars. But the truth was the opposite. The Treaty of Versailles, instead of bringing peace, sowed the seeds for an even greater disaster. Only 21 years later, the world was again engulfed in flames. World War II 1939 to 1945 became the bloodiest war in human history. This time the war didn't just happen in Europe, but spread globally. Nazi Germany under Hitler, along with Japan and Italy, initiated an unprecedented invasion. The world was divided into two factions: the Axis and the Allies. In that war, humanity witnessed horrific tragedies. Concentration camps, where millions of Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Blanket bombing raids that turned cities to ashes. And for the first time, atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing hundreds of thousands in an instant. World War II ended with 6 million deaths, a terrifying number, nearly 1/10 of the world's population at the time. More importantly, it left a scar on humanity's conscience. For the first time, people understood that they could create a tool to destroy the entire planet. After World War II, the world was not truly at peace. Instead of direct war, humanity entered a new era. The Cold War. The two superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union, confronted each other not just with weapons, but with ideologies, technology, and political influence. The world was split into capitalist and communist. This was a unique war. There were nitrogen monoxide all-out battles, but there was a constant state of readiness for destruction. Nuclear arsenals were stockpiled, enough to destroy life on Earth many times over. Proxy wars erupted everywhere from Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan to Africa and Latin America. The Cold War also created strange races: the space race, the technology race, and the cultural influence race. On one hand, it spurred scientific development, but on the other, it placed humanity in constant fear. One wrong decision could trigger a nuclear war at any moment. Looking back at modern wars, we see one thing clearly: war has become more destructive, but also increasingly irrational. World War I erupted because of an assassination and political arrogance. World War II broke out due to extremism and the failure to maintain peace. The Cold War lasted for decades, killing millions in proxy wars, simply because two superpowers would not back down. Modern war shows us that there is nitrogen monoxide longer between the battlefield and the home front. A single bomb can kill soldiers and children alike. A leader's decision can change the fate of millions. And humanity, despite its technological progress, has not escaped the brutal cycle of violence. The role of money and resources. People often say that wars are fought for noble ideals, to defend the homeland, liberate a nation, or preserve peace. But a deeper look reveals a harsh truth. Behind most wars, there is the shadow of money, resources, and economic interests. Modern warfare has created a massive industry. The arms industry: guns, tanks, planes, warships, bombs, and ammunition are not just military tools. They are also products to be sold, traded, and used to get rich. In many countries, especially the great powers, military budgets account for a huge portion of state spending. Arms manufacturers have become powerful economic and political forces. They create jobs, drive research, and also put pressure on conflicts to never truly end. There is a paradox: peace can bring stability, but war brings profit to arms corporations. And when death becomes a profitable product, The motive to sustain war also appears. Many wars throughout history and today have been caused by the struggle for resources: land, gold, oil, and fresh water. In ancient times, empires conquered each other to seize land and slaves. In modern times, all has become the blood of the global economy. The wars in the Middle East in the 20th and 21st centuries cannot be separated from the ambition to control this energy source. In the future, fresh water and rare earth minerals could become the cause of new conflicts as demand increases and resources dwindle. Resources make war not just a political issue, but one of survival. Whoever controls the resources holds power. One of the unique forms of modern warfare is the proxy war. Instead of directly confronting each other, superpowers support factions in other countries, turning those regions into battlefields. The consequence: the people of small nations bear the suffering, while the superpowers control events from afar. The wars in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, and many civil wars in Africa all fit this pattern. Here, economic and political interests are intertwined, selling weapons, expanding influence, and seizing markets. And the tragic thing is that small nations become pawns on the chessboard of the great players. A hard truth to deny is that war doesn't just destroy. It also stimulates the economy. Many nations have recovered, thanks to military orders and post-war reconstruction. Some scholars even call this the war effect, when destruction paves the way for rebuilding and growth. But is it fair that the prosperity of some nations is built on the blood and tears of others? This is an ethical question that the world has yet to answer. New forms of conflict in the 21st century. 21st century war is nitrogen monoxide longer like the old wars. It doesn't always have clear front lines or official declarations. Instead, it hides in modern cities, in cyberspace, and in global financial flows. While ancient wars were seen with the naked eye, cavalry, swords, fire, and smoke, today's wars are often invisible but nitrogen monoxide less brutal. Many hotspots around the world continue to smolder. The Middle East with its civil wars and the competition for influence by major powers. Africa with its resource wars and armed terrorism. Eastern Europe with geopolitical tensions that have never cooled down. And Asia with its territorial disputes, where every island and sea can become a spark. These conflicts do not always escalate into full-scale war, but they always hang as a threat. Just one incident or one wrong decision, and the fire can ignite. A new form of 21st century warfare is global terrorism. It doesn't require a powerful army or clear borders, but it spreads fear everywhere. After the 9/11 attacks in the US, the world entered a phase where the enemy nitrogen monoxide longer wears a uniform or stands in formation but hides within society. Extremist groups use homemade bombs, suicide attacks, and even social media to recruit and spread their ideology. This form of war is particularly difficult to counter because it has nitrogen monoxide specific battlefield, and the enemy can be anyone. The consequence is that the entire world must live in a state of constant vigilance. If the 20th century saw the atomic bomb, the 21st century is seeing the digital bomb. Cyber attacks can paralyze an entire city, shut down financial systems, destroy power plants, and even influence a nation's elections. Cyber warfare doesn't kill people instantly, like bombs and bullets, but its consequences can be equally severe. An attacked hospital system, a collapsed national power grid, a hacked major bank all can throw society into chaos. The frightening thing is that cyber weapons are not expensive, not easy to identify, and any country, organization, or individual can become a player in this war. IT makes the world more fragile than ever before. A special aspect of modern warfare is media warfare. Information, images, and stories can become weapons. In the era of social media, a video, a post, or a tweet can influence global public opinion and even change the political situation. If victory was once measured by territory gained, today it is also measured by the ability to control people's minds. When people believe that one side is righteous and the other is evil, the war is already half decided. Media turns war into a performance for the public, where every image and every story can be used as ammunition. And the final victim is still the truth, because in war truth is often the first casualty. The 21st century also has other forms of war that are less named but have far-reaching effects. Economic warfare through sanctions, embargoes and trade wars, technological warfare for control of platforms, data and artificial intelligence, and biological warfare, with the fear that biological weapons could be used, especially after the global pandemic. These wars have nitrogen monoxide guns, but they can change the global balance of power and affect billions of people. Lessons and the hope for peace. Every war, large or small, leaves wounds that last for generations. Villages are razed and never rebuilt. Families lose parents and children, leaving a permanent void. Veterans return carrying not just physical wounds, but also lifelong psychological trauma. Human history is a long chain of wars, but paradoxically, the more blood is shed, the more humanity longs for peace. The wounds of war, though painful, are also the strongest reminder that nitrogen monoxide victory is worth the price of human life. War teaches us many things, but perhaps the most important lesson is that nitrogen monoxide one truly wins. One side may gain territory, power and resources, but what is lost? Trust, humanity, and opportunities for development can never be fully measured. From Hiroshima, from Berlin, from Rwanda, from Syria, all are milestones for the world to remember. That war can turn a magnificent city into a pile of ashes in just a few days. And the greatest lesson is this: preventing war is always cheaper and more humane than trying to fix its consequences. Many people think peace means there is nitrogen monoxide war, but in reality, true peace is not just the silence of guns. It is also when social justice is ensured. The gap between rich and poor is not pushed too wide, and people have the opportunity to make a living, learn and love in a safe environment. If injustice, poverty, and oppression still exist, then peace is only superficial, because those are the very conditions that are fertile ground for conflict to arise. The current generation lives in a world full of contradictions. We inherit advanced technology while facing the dangers of modern warfare. Our responsibility is not just to prevent the past from repeating itself, but also to build a sustainable foundation for future generations. This responsibility does not lie only in the hands of politicians, but in every individual. A teacher who sows the seeds of humanity in students, an honest journalist who protects the truth, and an ordinary citizen who knows how to respect differences and choose dialogue over violence. Peace begins with small actions like these. Despite differences in language, religion, and skin color, most people long for one simple thing: to live in peace, to raise children, to live, and to pursue happiness. Peace is not something distant. It is that simple dream, and perhaps, if humanity learns to put people above interests and life above power, then war can gradually recede, existing only in history books.